Hello, Coolman229 here with another Topic of the Week video. While recording the last topic video, I didn't know it was going to end up being late because I thought I had internet and then I discovered I couldn't upload it. But I do know that this topic video is going to be late, so I decided I'm going to be doing another Avatar topic. The topic for this video was submitted by a Tumblr anon, and it is why some people think Korra was more competent than Aang. And this can actually be attributed to the way Korra was written in Legend of Korra. Specifically, when you look at her power set and what she accomplished. Like if you take a look at the end of season 1, or book 1 of Legend of Korra versus book 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, look at what each of them accomplished. Okay, so Aang has he's pretty much nailed waterbending by this point, by the end of book 1. So he's got that checkmark done. So at that point he knows airbending and waterbending, and he ends up stopping the invasion of the Fire Nation to the Northern Water Tribe, mostly on accident because he merges with the Moon Spirit, or the Ocean Spirit, because the Moon Spirit was killed by Zhao, and turns into Quazilla. So, yeah, that's what he accomplishes by book 1. What does Korra accomplish? Well, you see, she starts off the show already having mastered 3 of the 4 elements, all except air. By the end of the series, she unlocks the ability to airbend, defeats the Equalists single-handedly, and luckily Tarlok commits suicide and kills Amon, so we don't have to deal with that plot thread. And then you have... And then she's... It still pisses me off every time I think about it. Aang literally just shows up for her, unlocks all of her spiritual connections, gives her energy bending and the Avatar state, and restores her all of her bending. That's how Aang was pretty much at the end of book 3. So when people think that Korra was more competent, or that she accomplished more than Aang did, it's a very superficial view. It doesn't help at all that Brian and Mike went out of their way in interviews to try to downplay Aang in pretty much every way, and not even just that, but also in the show by trying to show Aang as being a horrible person, a selfish and emotionally abusive father who was critical and borderline hateful of his own children, despite the fact that he was one of the most fun-loving and kind people in the original series. Why does this change happen? Because they needed to make Korra look better. And a lot of the stuff in Legend of Korra, and the way Bright do, is they're trying to do everything they can to downplay Avatar: The Last Airbender, and specifically Aang, in order to prop Korra up, making her look better. So if you take everything just at their word and just what's said in the show, then of course Korra looks better. Look, she did all this stuff that's so much better. It doesn't make any sense, but if you're looking at it from that perspective, then yeah, Korra is more competent than Aang. Well, look, she gained energy bending and mastered the Avatar state and mastered all 4 elements in her first season. But she started off farther than Aang. Because if you actually look at how they start, at the very beginning of book 1 for each of their respective series, Aang starts off being a skilled airbender, but just like the intro of the show says, just because those airbending skills are great, he's got a long way to go before he's ready to save anyone. And he's spiritual. That's important. And yeah, that's about it. You see, the entire show is Aang growing from this relatively low point in his development, in his in his avatar training of what he's supposed to accomplish as an avatar, and you see him build up these powers over the course of the show before he ends up getting into his final conflict with Ozai. Korra, by contrast, starts off the Legend of Korra having mastered fire, earth, and waterbending, with airbending just kind of seeing something she just doesn't get. She doesn't get spirituality. So in a lot of ways, everything that Aang had to accomplish, all that work he had to do, Korra starts off her show by doing that anyway. Now, it's kind of funny when you really put things in perspective that Aang, by the time he had gained all these powers, he was 13. He starts off being 12, and the whole show goes over the course of a year. So Aang mastered all 4 elements, mastered the Avatar state, mastered energy bending by the time he was 13, and was a very spiritual person, and became a very wise Avatar when he was 13. Korra, at age 16 or 17, I don't remember what. I always have 16 in my head. It may have been 17, but regardless, in her late teens, she hadn't accomplished everything Aang did. When you really break it down and look at it, Aang was far more competent than Korra. Not just in terms of morality or his choices or his development, but just if you look at it from a sheer power standpoint, which is what a lot of people use to defend Korra as being better, Aang still beats her out. The only thing that you have to go by is when Brian and Mike piss on Aang, like trying to make fun of him for being mad when Appa was stolen by the Sandbenders. Like, that interview still pisses me off to this day. I remember when I read that for the first time, and I was like, you bastards! Like, I'm sorry. What? Oh yeah, he was just whining about his bison being stolen. Like, guys, I mean, Brian and Mike, guys, I know you guys didn't write Avatar: Last Airbender, you just stole credit from everyone, but I would have assumed that you would have at least watched the show and knew that Appa wasn't just a bison. He was literally the only connection that Aang had to his culture, a culture that was genocided and wiped off the face of the earth, and hunted down until it was extinct. So yeah, Appa was pretty important to him. And I think they know this. They know this, but they're such hacks that they are willing to openly lie in order to try to make their own character, Korra, look better. Because they didn't have any squat to do with the success of Avatar: Last Airbender. And, they realize this, and there may be some feelings of inadequacy that they're trying so hard to disprove by acting overly, arrogant. And Brian are just awful. But that is all, all this stuff that Legend of Korra and Bright did, that's all stuff that's trying to build up Korra as being better. Oh yeah, and also her learning a metal bending. Something like that. Like, I mentioned this before. I believe I mentioned this in my video on the subbending forms, which is just a couple weeks ago, that everything that Korra accomplished was just adding check marks to, another bullet point to her character description. And giving her something like metal bending, which is something that Aang didn't master. Definitely didn't master it in the show, and I don't believe he mastered it in his, when he became older. But regardless, we don't have any real reliable canon for post Avatar: Last Airbender's finale. Or at least not much of it anyway. But when Aang didn't get this stuff, it almost feels like Korra got this stuff just because Aang didn't. Like, oh, look what we can do. We can give Korra metal bending. Aang didn't have that. That makes her better, right? No, it doesn't. And like I said before in my last video about the bending subforms, bending for the most part overall was just there to look cool in Legend of Korra, and Korra was there to look cool. Pretty much everything Korra did was just there to look cool. And yeah, book 1 had a few decent moments, but book 1 being the best book is a different discussion. And but for the most part, every time she did something, it was just to look cool. Aang, by contrast, actually had reasons to learn stuff. You know, his development over the course of the show had meaning to it. It had meat to its development. There was a... By the end of it, there was a significant change for good reason. And for the better. With Korra, she by the... Book 1, Episode 1 to, you know, the finale of Book 4, Korra's the same person. The differences are minute. By the end of Book 4, the only difference really about her is that she has a haircut. A dumb haircut, mind you. A haircut that makes her look far more generic than her, you know, signature haircut that she had in the last several books, but I digress. And really, this is the problem. The reason Korra looks more competent is simply because of the more superficial aspect of her character. Everything about her character is superficial. You know, all the stuff that seemed like they were meaningful contrasts to Aang, in the end you realize they were just there to make her look better than Aang. She starts off her show like, okay, like I think I mentioned before, like if you had, you know, the developments of, you know, what it takes to be an avatar, and you have, this is like nothing, and then you see this is full avatar. Aang was about here, and Korra started off here. So Korra started off her show far ahead of Aang, making her look more competent, even though, like I said before, Aang accomplished all this stuff several years before Korra would have, with their respective ages. With Korra only learning occasional things like metal bending. And it's like, and yeah, Korra, I wouldn't mind Korra learning more things than Aang did in the show, especially since she already started off with, you know, all 3 of the 4 elements, having her learn something like maybe lightning generation, or, you know, lightning redirection, metal bending, stuff like that doesn't particularly bother me. I thought it would be, actually, that'd be really cool to explore an avatar learning those abilities. But we didn't get that. Because there's no meaning to Korra's development, and there's no meaning to the Legend of Korra, because Brian and Mike are incompetent writers. And even when they had other writers working on the show, everything was in a stranglehold because they had this iron grip over everything, and it pisses me off. So ultimately, really, I think I've pretty much talked about everything. This isn't a particular in-depth topic, but it's something that I do think is a really important question to ask. You know, why so many people would say that Korra was a better avatar than Aang, despite the fact that Korra kind of tried to start another world war in Book 2 by dragging the United forces into the Water Nation Civil War, and the only person with any common sense was freaking President Raiko. But oh boy, that all is that's a different discussion. But yeah, Korra was horrible, and despite his worst faults and the worst moments he had and his worst choices he ever made, he was always better than Korra, because at least he learned from his mistakes. And yeah, so I think that's about it for today. If you want to watch if you want to submit a topic, just make sure you're following the rules down below. And if you're on YouTube, you can simply comment below on a topic you want me to talk about. Or if you're on Tumblr, you can send me an ask and just make sure to put it as topic : and then whatever topic you want me to talk about. If you want to watch last week's topic video, you can check that out here. If you want to watch next week's topic video, you can check that out here when I get that done. And thank you for watching.